I never thought it would come to this. Never in my wildest dreams. I was a guy who trusted people, especially the woman I loved. It wasn't like I had a history of paranoia or anything, but as I stood there looking at her, the doubt crept in. It was the little things, at first tiny shifts in her behavior, that seemed out of place. But when something doesn't feel right, you can't ignore it, not if you want to keep your sanity. And so, I found myself in a position I never thought I'd be in, questioning my wife, questioning everything we built together. Let me take you back to the beginning. It was the usual routine for us. We had our house, our jobs, our quiet life. We'd been married for over 5 years, and everything seemed perfect on the surface. But something started to change around 6 months ago. I couldn't put my finger on it at first. At first, it was harmless. She'd start coming home late from work or talking less at dinner. She'd make excuses about being busy with a new project or meeting a colleague for drinks. But over time, the excuses became more frequent, and her phone, which used to sit innocently on the kitchen counter, was now always glued to her hand. And I noticed she'd lock it every time I walked into the room. It wasn't just her phone either. She started getting these strange looks, nervous laughter when she thought I wasn't paying attention, and I knew something was off. One evening, I came home early. I expected to find her at home, probably just winding down after a long day. But when I opened the door, it was quiet. Too quiet. The lights were off in the living room, the TV wasn't on, and she wasn't in the kitchen like she normally would be, preparing dinner. I called out her name, but there was no answer. I checked our bedroom, the bathroom, and even the study, but she wasn't there. It felt wrong. I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that settled in my gut. I decided to sit in the living room and wait. Maybe she was out for a walk or just finishing up something at the office. But an hour passed, then two. Still no sign of her. I started thinking the worst. What if she was out with someone? What if she was having an affair? The thought made my stomach turn, but it felt like the only logical explanation. I didn't want to believe it, but it was all I could think about. Then the door clicked open, and she walked in. She smiled when she saw me sitting there, but I could see the brief flash of nervousness in her eyes. It was subtle, but it was there. "Hey, babe," she said, like everything was normal. I could tell she was trying to act casual, but something in her voice didn't match her words. "Where were you?" I asked, trying to sound calm, though inside my heart was racing. "Oh, just out with Lisa," she replied. Lisa? I hadn't heard her mention Lisa in weeks. The name struck me like a bolt of lightning. I didn't know if it was the way she said it or the way she avoided making eye contact, but I had a feeling something wasn't right. Lisa was someone I'd never met. She worked with my wife in some marketing firm, but they weren't exactly close. It didn't make sense for her to be out with Lisa, especially not on a weekday. She went on to talk about how they had been catching up after work, but I could hear the hesitation in her voice. It was like she was trying to cover something up. I didn't push it. I wasn't ready to confront her yet. The last thing I wanted was to make accusations without concrete evidence. But I knew something was off. And the more I thought about it, the more it started to gnaw at me. After that night, things only got worse. I started noticing her behavior becoming more erratic. She'd come home smelling like perfume I didn't recognize, a little too much makeup for a simple office day, and sometimes her clothes weren't quite right. Small things, but things that didn't match the woman I knew. I'd like to say that I was calm about it, that I didn't jump to conclusions, but the truth is, I couldn't stop myself. I became obsessed. I started paying attention to every detail. Every time she left the house, every text she sent, every phone call she made. It wasn't healthy, I know that now, but I couldn't help it. I needed answers. That's when I decided to install the cameras. Now, I wasn't doing this lightly. I didn't want to invade her privacy. I didn't want to betray her trust. But the nagging feeling in my chest wouldn't go away. I had to know. I had to get to the truth. I installed the cameras in places where I knew she wouldn't notice them: the kitchen, the hallway, and one in the living room, where she usually spent her evenings. It was subtle, hidden. They were tiny, almost invisible, unless you were looking for them. I figured that if she was being honest, then I'd never have to look at the footage. But if she wasn't, well, I needed to be prepared. The first few days went by without anything unusual. I started to think maybe I was just paranoid, so imagining things that weren't there. But then the footage showed something. It was a Wednesday evening. She came home late, just like usual. But this time, she didn't just go straight to the kitchen or the bathroom. She walked to the living room where she sat down, checked her phone, and then made a call. She didn't think I was watching, didn't know that I was seeing everything she was doing. The call was brief. She spoke in hushed tones, almost like she didn't want anyone to hear her. It was clear that she wasn't speaking to a friend. There was an intensity in her voice that I hadn't heard before. After the call ended, she quickly left the house again, this time with her purse in hand, and walked out without a word to me. I sat there, frozen, as I replayed the footage over and over in my mind. Who was she calling? Why was she leaving in the middle of the night? And why did she seem so secretive? But I still didn't have enough to confront her. I needed more, and that's when the panic set in. The next day, I decided I was going to confront her. I had the footage, I had the evidence, and I couldn't let this continue. But as I thought about how to approach her, something strange happened. I came home early again. She wasn't expecting me. When I walked in, there she was, standing in the living room, pacing nervously. Her face paled when she saw me. And in that moment, I knew. She knew. She was hiding something. That's when I decided to do it. I walked over to the bookshelf, grabbed the hidden camera, and held it up in front of her. "Do you recognize this?" I asked, my voice steady, though my heart was racing. She froze. Her eyes widened. Next, and her breath caught in her throat. Her face went white. She panicked, visibly shaking as she tried to form words, but failed. "What? What is that?" she stammered, but I could hear the fear in her voice. That's when the truth started to spill out. The panic in her eyes was unmistakable, and she couldn't hide it anymore. She was caught, and in the silence that followed, everything came to light. I didn't expect her to admit it immediately, but I wasn't prepared for what she said next. Stay tuned to find out how it all unravels. What happened when she finally came clean? Who was she seeing behind my back? And how did everything fall apart? But that's a story for next time. As I stood there, holding the small, innocuous camera in my hand, her face drained of color. She was trying to mask it, but there was no denying the panic in her eyes. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I trusted with everything, was standing in front of me, caught red-handed. I could see the wheels in her mind turning, desperately searching for a way out, but there was nowhere to hide anymore. Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. The silence was deafening, and for the first time, I felt an overwhelming sense of powerlessness. The truth hung in the air between us, but she couldn't speak it. I was ready, prepared for a confession, but I didn't know if I was ready for the pain it would bring. I placed the camera on the table, a quiet but deliberate gesture that made her flinch. I wasn't angry, not yet, but the questions, the hurt, the confusion, they surged in my chest, fighting for space. "What's going on? Amelia?" My voice came out hoarse, like I was trying to push through a wall of emotions that had been building up for months. "Who were you talking to last night?" She swallowed hard, her lips trembling. She was trying to hold it together, but the tears that had been threatening to fall started to gather at the corner of her eyes. She wiped them away quickly, but it didn't help. She was already too far gone. I could see it in her face. The guilt, the shame. She knew what was coming. Finally, she spoke. But when the words came out, they weren't what I expected. "I never meant for it to happen," she said, almost in a whisper, as though she was trying to convince herself more than she was trying to explain. "I didn't want to hurt you." The words hit me like a slap. She wasn't denying it. She wasn't even trying to make excuses. And for a split second, I wondered if this was her way of finally coming clean. But then she did something I wasn't prepared for. She stepped back, as if putting more space between us could make the weight of her betrayal easier to bear. "Who is he?" I asked again, this time with more force, trying to steady the shaking in my voice. "Who's the man you've been seeing?" Amelia seemed to hesitate. It was like she was trying to make a decision whether to tell me everything or try to hold on to her secrets a little longer. I could see the conflict in her eyes, the struggle between guilt and fear. But she knew that the truth was inevitable. It was no longer something she could hide. "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice breaking. "His name is Evan. Evan Miller." Evan. The name didn't mean anything to me at first. I'd never heard it before, but I could feel my heart tightening in my chest as she spoke. I needed to know who this person was, how he fit into our lives, and what they had shared. What had I missed? "Evan Miller," I repeated slowly, trying to digest the name. "How did you meet him?" Her eyes dropped to the floor, and she seemed to shrink under the weight of her own admission. "It wasn't planned. He's a colleague. We started working together about a year ago. It was just supposed to be professional at first. At first. Those words stung. It wasn't just the fact that she had been unfaithful. It was the fact that she had started this relationship with the same excuses she'd used for everything else in the past. It's just business. I'm just tired. I'm just busy. But underneath those excuses, there had been something else. And now, she was finally admitting it. "Then what happened?" I pressed, not wanting to let her off the hook so easily. "How did it go from business to whatever this is?" She paused, glancing up at me with a look of guilt and regret. But it wasn't enough. Not after everything. Not after the lies. We started talking more, just simple conversations at first, but over time, it became more personal. We began meeting for lunch and then dinner, and it just happened. One night, he kissed me. I didn't stop him. My stomach churned as the words fell from her lips. She didn't stop him. She didn't stop herself. And in that moment, I realized that this wasn't some accident. It wasn't a mistake that could be explained away. She had made a choice to betray me, a choice to seek comfort in someone else's arms. And in doing so, she had shattered everything we had built together. I stood there, speechless for a moment, processing the weight of what she had just revealed. The woman I had shared my life with, the woman I trusted, had chosen someone else. She had given herself to someone else. And I couldn't understand how it had all happened without me noticing. I didn't know how long we stood there in silence, but when I spoke again, my voice was low, controlled. "How long has this been going on?" Amelia hesitated, and for a brief moment, I thought she might lie to me again. But then her shoulders slumped in defeat, and she looked me in the eyes. 6 months. It's been 6 months, and I'm so sorry. 6 months. My mind reeled. For 6 months, I had been living with this woman, sharing my life with her, while she was carrying on an affair. She was right there, in our home, in our bed, and I had no idea. How had I missed it? How had she been able to deceive me for so long? "You said you didn't mean to hurt me," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "But you did. You hurt me more than you could ever understand. Do you even realize what you've done?" Her face crumpled as the tears began to fall freely. "I didn't want this, I swear. I love you. But I got lost. I made a terrible mistake. I was looking for something, and I thought I found it with him. But I was wrong. So wrong. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that this was just some mistake, that it wasn't as bad as it seemed. But deep down, I knew the truth. This wasn't just a mistake. This was betrayal. And there was no going back from that. But then something happened. As she sobbed in front of me, pleading for forgiveness, I felt something inside me snap. The anger I'd been holding back finally surfaced. "You love me?" I spat, my voice rising with emotion. "Then, why didn't you come to me when you were lost? Why didn't you talk to me? Why didn't you tell me you were struggling? Instead, you chose to cheat. You chose to hurt me. And now you're telling me you love me." She staggered back, as if my words had physically struck her. I don't know what to say. I was selfish. I never thought about how it would hurt you. But please, don't walk away from me. Don't leave me. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. There were so many emotions swirling inside me: betrayal, anger, confusion, and sadness. But at that moment, I knew something. I had to make a decision. Was I going to let her back in, knowing what she had done? Or was this the end of our marriage? The truth had come out, but it wasn't enough. I needed more than just words. I needed to understand why. I needed to know if this was something we could fix, or if this was truly the end. "Amelia," I said softly, my voice steady now, You've broken my trust, and I don't know if I can ever get it back." She looked at me with wide eyes, as if she was waiting for some sign that I might forgive her. But I couldn't give her that. Not yet. I needed time. I needed to think. "I need some space," I said, turning away from her. "I can't do this right now." The door clicked shut behind me as I left the room, leaving her there alone with the consequences of her actions. And that, in a way, was the hardest part. The not knowing. The wondering if it was too late to save what we had. The days following that confrontation felt like a blur. I went through the motions of life, but nothing felt the same. Every glance at her, every word she spoke, every little gesture that once felt familiar now felt foreign, tainted by the truth that had been exposed. Amelia had made her choices, and now I had to make mine. I couldn't just forget what had happened, nor could I erase the image of her in our living room, confessing to an affair that had torn apart everything we built. But still, there was this nagging part of me that couldn't let go. We had been together for so long, and despite everything, I didn't want to throw it all away. She was my wife, the woman I had shared my life with, the woman who had been by my side through everything, or so I thought. But now, as I sat in our living room, my heart felt like it was breaking all over again. Every corner of the house reminded me of the lies, the deceit, the woman I once loved. The house felt empty. Amelia gave me space like I had asked, but I could tell she was constantly watching me, waiting for a sign. She was desperate for forgiveness, but I wasn't ready to give it. I couldn't just forgive her because she was sorry. Forgiveness didn't come that easily. It couldn't. Not after what she had done. The tension in the house was suffocating. She would leave me small notes or texts, trying to apologize, trying to explain herself, but I wasn't interested in hearing it. The more I read, the more it felt like an endless cycle of her saying the same thing. "I'm sorry, I made a mistake, I love you." But it didn't change the fact that she had betrayed me. I knew I couldn't continue like this forever. I couldn't keep living in the same house with her while my mind replayed everything over and over. So, I made a decision. I had to confront her again, but this time, it wasn't going to be just about her apology. It was about me understanding the truth. It was about knowing why she did what she did, why she chose to throw away everything we had. One evening, after days of avoiding each other, I finally walked into the living room, where she was sitting on the couch. Her eyes flicked up when she saw me, and I could see the faint trace of hope in her expression. She looked almost relieved that I was approaching her. She had been waiting for this moment, I could tell. "Amelia," I said, my voice firm, "we need to talk." She nodded, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "I know, I'm so sorry. I don't know how to make things right. But I'm here, I'll listen. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this." But I wasn't interested in her doing what she thought it would take. I needed to hear the truth, all of it. I couldn't move forward without understanding everything. "I don't just want an apology," I said, sitting down across from her. "I need you to explain everything. How did this happen? How did you get to the point where you thought this was okay? Where you thought it was okay to cheat?" She winced, her eyes lowering, but I could see the hesitation there. She was still trying to find the right words. It was like she was afraid to say too much, but I couldn't let her hold back anymore. Not after everything. "Evan," she began, her voice quieter now. "He's different. I never intended for things to go this far. When we first started working together, it was harmless. I swear it was, but after a while, he started noticing me in ways you didn't. I felt seen, heard, appreciated. I didn't realize how much I needed that until it was too late. I clenched my jaw, listening, but I could feel the anger rising in me. The words she was saying made sense, but they didn't justify anything. They didn't explain why she didn't come to me when she was feeling neglected, why she didn't talk to me before seeking someone else. "And what about me?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "What was I, Amelia? Was I not enough? Was I not there for you?" She shook her head frantically. "No, you were everything to me." "But Evan gave me attention when I was starting to feel invisible. I was feeling so disconnected from everything, from you, from life. I just, I felt like I was fading into the background." Her words hit me like a punch in the gut. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was blaming her neglect on me, making it sound like it was my fault that she strayed. Sure, I wasn't perfect. We'd had our issues, our struggles, like any couple. But I never thought it would lead to this. I never thought she would turn to someone else instead of talking to me. Why didn't you come to me? I asked again, this time with more urgency. Why didn't you tell me that something was wrong? You could have told me anything. I know, she whispered, tears welling up in her eyes again. I was ashamed. I thought if I told you, it would make it worse. I thought I could handle it myself, but I couldn't. I was scared of losing you. And then one night, when Evan kissed me, it just felt like everything I needed at that moment. I stood up abruptly, my anger boiling over. I couldn't take it anymore. The self-pity, the excuses. She was still rationalizing her betrayal. Don't you dare make it sound like you were just some innocent victim in this, I shouted, the pain in my voice breaking through. You made a choice. You chose him. You chose to lie to me, to sneak around behind my back. Don't sit here and tell me you didn't know what you were doing. She shrank back from me, her face crumpling with guilt. She didn't argue. She didn't try to defend herself anymore. She just sat there, crying silently. I didn't know what to do at that point. I felt like I had no more energy left to fight for something that was already broken. I had spent the last few days trying to figure out what was next for us. Siam, could we rebuild? Could we ever go back to the way things were? I didn't have an answer. Amelia, I can't keep doing this, I said, my voice shaking with emotion. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if I can ever forgive you for what you did, but I need space. I need to think. I can't live like this anymore. The words were final. They were the hardest words I'd ever had to say, and I meant them. I'm sorry, she sobbed. Please don't leave me. I'll do anything. But I was already turning away. I couldn't stay, not when everything felt like a lie. I needed to get away from her, from this house, from everything that had been tainted by her betrayal. I'll be back later, I said, walking out of the living room and out the door. And just like that, I left her behind. The woman I loved. The woman I thought I knew. But in my heart, I knew that we had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. There was no going back. The days that followed felt like an eternity. The air in the house was thick with tension. But I couldn't bring myself to go back. Every time I thought about returning, I saw Amelia's face. The tears, the regret, the desperation in her eyes. She was sorry, yes, but sorry wasn't enough. Sorry didn't erase the betrayal. Sorry didn't give me back the trust she had shattered. I spent the first few days away from her at my best friend's place. I needed space, a place where I could think clearly. The house felt too small, too suffocating. The walls were filled with memories, good memories, memories that now felt like they belonged to someone else. It was as if the very essence of who we were had been tainted, and nothing could ever make it feel the same again. I told myself I was just going to stay for a few days, clear my head, and then go back to figure things out. But as the days passed, I began to feel a sense of relief. The weight I had been carrying for months, no, for years, was starting to lift. The anxiety, the constant fear of being blindsided, the questions that never seemed to have answers, it all began to fade. I felt a sense of freedom that I hadn't realized I was craving. But there was still a part of me that couldn't shake the thought of Amelia. Despite everything, I still loved her. I didn't want to let go of the dream we'd once shared. The dream of a life built together, of love and trust. But now, it seemed like those dreams had been nothing more than a fantasy. How could I ever trust her again? How could I ever believe anything she said after what she'd done? I called her once, just to check in. Her voice was fragile, like she was walking on eggshells, afraid of saying the wrong thing. I miss you, she said quietly, her voice trembling. I know I've messed up, but please, don't leave me. I'll do anything. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to hold on to the hope that she could change, that we could somehow rebuild what we had. But the truth was, the damage was done. The trust had been broken beyond repair, and no amount of apologies could fix that. The next day, I went back home. I knew I had to face her again, but this time, I wasn't walking in with the same blind hope. I wasn't coming back to make things work just because I wanted to believe in the fairy tale. I was coming back to face reality. When I walked through the door, she was sitting in the living room, her hands folded in her lap. She looked up when she heard me, her eyes full of expectation and fear. She had been waiting for me. She had been waiting for this moment for me to decide if I was going to stay or walk away. I didn't know what to say at first. There was so much running through my mind: anger, sadness, confusion, regret. But most of all, there was this overwhelming sense of loss of trust, loss of what we once had. And the hardest part was knowing that I couldn't get that back. No matter how much she begged or how many times she apologized, I couldn't pretend that things were okay anymore. "Amelia," I said, my voice steady but full of emotion, "I don't know if I can keep doing this. I don't know if I can keep living like this. Wondering if I can ever trust you again." She stood up, her face filled with desperation. "Please don't say that. I'm so sorry. I've made the biggest mistake of my life. I don't want to lose you. I'll do whatever it takes to prove to you that I can change." But I wasn't so sure anymore. How could I believe that? How could I believe that she could change when she had already shown me who she really was? I had always known her as someone who was honest, someone I could trust with my heart. But now, I saw her for what she truly was: someone capable of betrayal, someone willing to lie to my face for months, and it broke me. "I need to hear you say it," I said, trying to hold back the tears that were threatening to spill. "I need to hear you say that you understand why this is over, why you can't just expect me to forgive you and forget. I need you to understand what you've done." She collapsed back onto the couch, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. "I understand," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I know I messed up. I ruined everything. And I don't deserve your forgiveness. I don't deserve you." The words stung, but they also felt like a small victory. I had wanted her to acknowledge the full weight of what she had done, to understand the damage she had caused. But even with her words, it didn't feel like enough. The pain was still there, lingering like a heavy cloud. "I can't keep doing this, Amelia," I said, my heart breaking with every word. "I can't keep pretending like everything is fine when it's not. You broke my trust, and I don't know if I can ever get it back." Her eyes were filled with tears, and for a moment she just stared at me, as if hoping I would change my mind. But deep down, I knew I couldn't. I couldn't live in this lie anymore. I couldn't be with someone who had hurt me so deeply and then expected me to just move on. "I think it's time for us to part ways," I said, the finality of the words hitting me like a punch in the stomach. "I can't keep living like this. We need space. We need to figure out who we are without each other." She nodded, her tears falling freely now. "I understand," she whispered, barely able to speak through the sobs. "I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted to lose you." But it was too late. The decision had been made. And as much as it hurt, I knew it was the right one. I needed to move on. I needed to heal. And I couldn't do that with her in my life. Not after what she had done. I walked out of the room, my heart heavy, but my mind clear. This was the hardest thing I'd ever done, but I knew it was necessary. We couldn't go back to the way things were. And maybe, just maybe, it was time for both of us to move on.